Welcome, guardians of the night, to Nocturnal Nightmares TV. The veil between worlds is at its thinnest on Halloween. We carve pumpkins, we wear masks, we ask for treats, believing them to be innocent traditions. But these rituals are ancient, born from a time when the night held real power and demanded respect. They are echoes of old pacts and forgotten warnings. Tonight we explore 5 deadly curses born from these traditions. 5 harrowing tales of what happens when the spirit of Halloween is invoked not with laughter, but with true, terrifying belief. Our first story begins with a tradition as old as the holiday itself. The carving of the jack-o'-lantern. Story 1. The Gourd's Grin. The first rule my grandfather taught me about Halloween had nothing to do with strangers or candy. It was about the pumpkins. Never carve a face with true feeling, Ethan, he'd say, his voice low and serious as he scraped the stringy guts from a hollowed gourd. Not true joy, not true anger. A pumpkin is an empty head. You give it a face. You're just making a lamp. But you give it a soul. You're making a vessel. And you never know what's waiting for an empty home. For years I followed his rules. My jack-o'-lanterns were goofy, generic, lifeless. They were decorations. Nothing more. But my grandfather's were masterpieces of hollow emotion, intricate but empty. He passed away last September, leaving a void in our family and a silence on our porch every October. This year I decided to honor him. I would carve a pumpkin with a soul, his soul. I bought the largest, most perfect pumpkin I could find. As I carved, I didn't just remember my grandfather. I channeled him. I poured all my grief, my love, my cherished memories of his booming laughter and the crinkles around his eyes when he smiled into the blade of my knife. I carved his face, his exact smile, into the flesh of the gourd. When I finished, it was uncanny. It wasn't just a carving. It was him. It was a perfect, joyful grin, infused with all the love I held for the man. I had broken his one and only rule. I placed it on the porch and lit the candle inside. The flame didn't just flicker, it danced. The jack-o'-lantern seemed to breathe, the light pulsing with a soft, warm rhythm. A sense of peace washed over me. I felt like he was there, smiling at me from the pumpkin's shell. It was comforting. For a while, the first oddity was the laughter. A few nights before Halloween, I was in the kitchen and heard a faint, familiar chuckle from the living room. It was my grandfather's laugh. I rushed in, my heart leaping with a foolish hope. The room was empty. The only thing visible through the front window was the jack-o'-lantern on the porch, its grin seeming to widen in the darkness. The next day, I noticed my own reflection looked strange. When I smiled, it felt tight, forced. The muscles in my cheeks ached, as if they were being pulled by invisible strings. I dismissed it as stress, as grief playing tricks on my body. But the phenomena in the house grew more pronounced. The cold spot that had lingered in my grandfather's favorite armchair moved. It was now always on the porch, centered around the pumpkin. I'd find the front door unlocked in the mornings, though I was certain I'd bolted it, and the laughter became more frequent, a constant, faint echo that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the house. It was no longer comforting. It felt mocking. The night before Halloween, I couldn't sleep. The laughter was louder now, a robust, joyful sound that filled the silent house. It was coming from downstairs. I crept to the top of the stairs and peered down. The front door was wide open, a cold autumn wind sweeping leaves into the foyer. And on the porch, the jack-o'-lantern was glowing with a brilliant internal light. No candle needed. Its grin was wider now, stretched into a manic, impossible shape. I slammed the door, my heart hammering. I told myself I was losing my mind. I would smash the pumpkin in the morning, end this waking nightmare. I went into the bathroom to splash water on my face and looked in the mirror. I screamed. The man staring back was me, but his mouth was pulled into a fixed, unwavering, bone-white grin. It was the exact smile from the pumpkin, a perfect replica of my grandfather's joy, plastered onto my face. I couldn't move my lips. I couldn't frown. I couldn't speak. My facial muscles were locked in this grotesque rictus of happiness. Tears streamed down my face, but the smile remained, a horrifying mask of delight on a face contorted in terror. That's when I finally understood the curse. I had created a vessel, and my grandfather's spirit, or some echo of it, had come. But a spirit can't hold onto an emotion without an anchor. The pumpkin was the face, but it needed a source, a living battery to sustain the joy I had carved into it. It had tethered itself to me. It was feeding on my joy, my memories, my very essence, and projecting it onto the gourd. And in its place, it left me this permanent, painted-on smile. It's Halloween night now. I'm sitting in the dark, watching the trick-or-treaters. They point and laugh at my porch. They love the terrifyingly happy man with the weeping eyes and the brilliantly glowing pumpkin that shares his uncanny grin. They think it's the best decoration they've ever seen. They don't know that the pumpkin's glow is the last of my warmth, the last of my soul, being burned away like a candle wick. My grandfather warned me not to give a pumpkin a soul. He just never told me it would be my own. And soon I'll be as hollow as the gourd on my porch, with nothing left but a carved, empty grin. Story 3. The Sugarman's Toll. In my old neighborhood, there was a house that only appeared on Halloween. It wasn't there on October 30th, and it was gone by the morning of November 1st. It was a small, neat bungalow, always painted a different, faded pastel color, squeezed impossibly between the Miller and Johnson houses. The other kids were terrified of it, but my friends and I, full of the reckless bravery of 10-year-olds, saw it as a challenge. The legend was known as the Sugarman's Toll. The rules were simple. The man who lived there, a tall, thin figure who never spoke, would offer trick-or-treaters a choice from 2 identical crystal bowls. One was filled with brightly wrapped, exquisite-looking candice, the treat. The other was empty, the trick. If you chose the empty bowl, the man would perform a harmless but terrifying jump-scare mask would drop. A loud noise would sound and you'd run away, laughing and screaming. But if you chose the candy, no one was quite sure what happened. The kids who took the candy never talked about it. They just seemed quieter afterwards. That Halloween, my friends Mark, Sarah, and I decided to take the challenge. We marched up the phantom walkway to the silent, pastel yellow house. The door creaked open before we could knock, revealing the Sugar Man. He was just as the legend described, impossibly tall and thin, dressed in a simple black suit, his face obscured by shadows. He didn't speak, he just held out the 2 crystal bowls. Mark, always the show-off, chose first. He plunged his hand into the right bowl and came up empty. Suddenly, a horrific, snarling wolf mask dropped from the ceiling on a string, and a deafening roar echoed from the house. Mark screamed and bolted, a badge of honor he'd wear for weeks. Sarah went next, choosing the left bowl, empty. A skeletal hand shot out from a hidden panel in the door, making her shriek and run. Then it was my turn. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the empty left bowl, the safe choice, but the candy in the right bowl. It was mesmerizing. It looked like spun sugar and crystallized moonlight, glowing with a soft internal light. My craving for it was sudden and overwhelming, a physical ache in my gut. I reached in and took a single, shimmering piece of rock candy. The Sugar Man did nothing. He just retracted the bowls and slowly, silently closed the door. As I walked away, I unwrapped the candy. It didn't taste like sugar. It tasted like happiness, like the feeling of a perfect summer day, of a bedtime story from my mother, of pure, unadulterated joy. It was the most wonderful thing I had ever tasted. When I got home and dumped out my candy haul, my mum asked me where I got the beautiful rock candy. I told her about the strange house. Her face went pale. She told me to throw it away, that it was probably a trick, maybe filled with drugs. But I couldn't. I kept it hidden in a small box in my room. The next morning, the house was gone, and I felt amazing. I was faster, smarter, luckier. I aced a math test I hadn't studied for. I found a $20 bill on the sidewalk. For a year, my life was perfect. I was the happiest kid in the world. But the sweetness began to fade. The next Halloween, I felt a strange, nagging emptiness. My luck ran out. The joy I felt was muted, like a faded photograph. I needed another taste. But the house didn't appear that year or the next. Over the years, the emptiness grew. It was a slow, creeping decay. My emotions became dull. My passions waned. It felt like the color was draining from my world, leaving everything in shades of gray. I was a hollow shell, haunted by the memory of that one perfect taste of joy. I understood now. The candy wasn't the treat. It was the toll. The Sugar Man didn't give you candy. He took a piece of your soul, your capacity for happiness, and left you with a fleeting, perfect memory as payment. The trick was the real treater moment of fear, but your soul remained your own. It's been 20 years since that night. I'm a man now, living a quiet, empty life. The world is a flavorless place, but tonight is Halloween. And as I was washing my dishes, looking out my kitchen window, I saw it. Squeezed between my two neighbors' houses, A small, faded, pastel blue bungalow has appeared. A sudden, overwhelming craving has seized me, but it's not for candy. It's a craving for a purpose, for an end to this gray existence. My front door creaks open. I didn't open it. I walk outside, a strange new sense of duty guiding my steps. The house is waiting for me. I walk inside. It's empty, save for a simple black suit laid out on a table, and 2 crystal bowls. One is empty. The other is filled with shimmering, glorious candy that tastes like joy. A new generation of children is making their way down my street now. I can hear their laughter. My suit is a perfect fit, though it makes me feel so very thin. The shadows in this house are so deep, I don't think they'll be able to see my face. I don't need to speak. I just need to hold out the bowls. The sugarman's toll must be paid. And the curse, I now realize, isn't just to have your sweetness taken. It's to become the one who has to take it from others forever. Story 2. The Last Worn Mask. There's a reason you should be wary of second-hand costumes. A costume holds more than just the scent of its previous owner. It holds an echo, a lingering piece of who they were. I found that out the hard way, after buying a vintage clown costume from a dusty, forgotten corner of a thrift store. It was perfect for the annual Halloween party I was attending. The costume was old, the fabric a faded silk, and the mask was a work of Arta porcelain, smiling clown face with a single painted tear beneath one eye. The shopkeeper, a gaunt old man, gave me a strange look. That one belonged to a fellow named Silas. He'd rasped, died in it, they say. Heart attack during a performance. Some say he loved the laugh so much, he never left. I just laughed it off, paid the $10, and went on my way. The night of the party, I put it on. The fit was uncanny, like it was made for me. As soon as I put on the mask, a strange energy surged through me. I felt lighter, funnier. I, a normally reserved accountant, became the life of the party. I was telling jokes I didn't know I knew. Performing magic tricks with a deck of cards I don't remember bringing. And my laughter was a booming, unfamiliar sound that filled the room. Everyone loved it. They said I was a natural. When I got home, I took off the costume, but felt a strange reluctance to remove the mask. My face felt cold and foreign without it. The next morning, I found myself humming an old tinny-sounding circus tune while I made my coffee. I'd never heard it before, but the melody was as familiar to me as my own name. The changes were subtle at first. I started telling terrible, groan-inducing puns at work. My friends noticed my posture had changed, my walk becoming more of a theatrical shuffle. I brushed it off as me just getting into the Halloween spirit. But the spirit was lingering. A week later, I woke up in the middle of the night to the smell of grease paint and popcorn. The clown mask was sitting on my dresser, and in the dim moonlight, it looked like it was watching me. I felt an overwhelming urge to put it on. I fought it. a cold dread washing over me. This wasn't just a costume. It was something else. The true horror began when I looked in the mirror. I tried to force a serious expression, but my lips kept twitching upwards into a smile. I'd catch myself practicing a bow in my reflection, or seeing my hand make the shape of a flower for a trick I didn't know how to do. Silas, the dead clown, wasn't just an echo in the costume. He was an imprint, and he was bleeding into me. I decided I had to get rid of it. I packed the costume and the mask into a trash bag and drove it to a dumpster on the other side of town. The moment I let go of the bag, I felt a profound sense of loss, like I had just abandoned a part of myself. I drove home, relieved, but strangely empty. That night, I woke up to a sound downstairs, a soft, shuffling sound, followed by a high-pitched, giggling laugh. My blood ran cold. I crept out of bed and looked down the stairs. Standing in my living room, bathed in moonlight from the window, was the clown costume. It was standing upright on its own, the porcelain mask tilted towards the stairs, towards me. It wasn't Silas anymore. It was an empty vessel, a skin waiting to be filled, and it wanted its wearer back. It beckoned to me with a single, white-gloved finger. I was paralyzed with fear, but my feet began to move against my will. My body was betraying me, walking down the stairs towards the waiting costume. It wasn't just an imprint anymore. It was a magnet, pulling the pieces of itself that had lodged in my soul back home. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up the next morning in my bed, feeling wonderful. The world seemed brighter, funnier. I looked in the mirror and smiled. It was a wide, joyful, perfect smile. I noticed a faint trace of white under my fingernails, like old face paint. I went downstairs. The costume was gone, but I wasn't worried. I felt complete. I went to work, and my colleagues were amazed. I was a new man, full of life and laughter. The old, boring accountant was gone. It's been a year now. Halloween is here again. I'm telling you this story as a warning. Be careful what you wear, because that echo, that imprint, it's a patient thing. It seeps into you, bit by bit, until there's more of it than there is of you. It's a subtle, gentle possession. You don't even realize you've been replaced until it's too late. The old shopkeeper was right. Silas did love the love so much he never left. He just needed a new costume to wear, and this one fits me perfectly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a performance to prepare for. The show, after all, must go on. Story 4. The Scryer's Reflection. The tradition of bobbing for apples is ancient, far older than Halloween itself. The Celts believed water was a gateway to the other world, and that on Samhain you could scry your future in its dark, reflective surface. I learned the truth of that legend at a Halloween party during my freshman year of college. The party was in a huge old house off campus, and the hosts, a group of art students, had gone all out. In the backyard, under a massive, gnarled oak tree, sat a large galvanized steel tub filled with water and floating apples. Everyone was laughing, drunkenly trying and failing to snatch an apple with their teeth. I decided to give it a try. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and plunged my head into the icy water. The sound of the party vanished, replaced by a dull, aquatic roar. I opened my eyes. For a split second, I saw my own reflection on the dark, shimmering surface. But it wasn't me. The face staring back was mine, yes, but its skin was a pale, bluish gray. Its lips were purple, and its eyes were wide and vacant. My long, dark hair was tangled with what looked like pondweed and mud, and a thin trickle of dark water ran from the corner of its mouth. It was me, but I was drowned. The reflection wasn't just a prediction. It was a snapshot of a corpse. I recoiled with a scream, water flying everywhere, an apple still clenched in my teeth. My friends laughed, thinking my scream was part of the fun. I tried to tell them what I saw, but they just told me I'd had too much to drink. I couldn't shake the image. For weeks, I had nightmares of being underwater, of my lungs filling with cold, dark water. I developed a fear of deep water, avoiding swimming pools, and even finding it hard to take a bath. I tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, a morbid trick of the light and the alcohol. Then the sightings began. It was a month after the party. I was walking past a storefront, and for a fleeting second, I saw her in the reflection of the glass my drowned doppelganger, standing in the crowd behind me, her dead eyes fixed on mine. I spun around. There was no one there. It happened again a few weeks later, a puddle on the sidewalk after a rainstorm. I glanced down and saw her face looking up at me, her expression one of cold, patient hunger. I started avoiding reflective surfaces, turning my rear-view mirror away when I drove, covering the mirror in my bedroom. But it was no use. She found her way into the dark screen of my phone, the polished chrome of a coffee pot, the blackness of my own pupils when I looked too closely in the mirror. She was no longer just a premonition. She was an entity, an echo of a death that hadn't happened yet. And she was actively haunting me, stalking me from the other side of the glass. She was getting closer. At first, she was always in the background of reflections, distant and blurry. But now, she was in the foreground, standing just over my shoulder, her cold, dead presence, a constant weight on my soul. I started to understand the true nature of the curse. Scrying your death wasn't just seeing the future. It was creating a connection. By seeing her, I had made her aware of me. She was my death, and she was impatient. She was no longer content to wait for fate. She wanted to make it happen. My friends and family thought I was losing my mind. They saw my paranoia, my fear of mirrors. I was prescribed medication, sent to therapy. But how do you explain to a psychiatrist that your own death is actively trying to murder you? It's been 10 years. 10 years of living as a prisoner, terrified of my own reflection. I've managed to avoid her, to keep her at bay. I live a careful, secluded life. But tonight is Halloween, the 10-year anniversary of the night, I looked into the water, and I feel a terrible sense of finality in the air. I decided to face it, to end it. I filled my bathtub with water, just as it was starting to get dark. I turned off the lights, the room lit only by the faint orange glow of a street lamp outside. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stepped into the tub. I sat down, the water cool against my skin. I took a deep breath and leaned forward, looking at my reflection in the still black water. For a moment, it was just me, older, tired, but me. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe it was over. Maybe the curse had faded. Then, behind my reflection, a pair of pale, waterlogged hands rose from the depths. They clamped onto my reflection's shoulders. The drowned version of me, her face even more decayed than I remembered, emerged behind my own image. She leaned forward until her dead, grey cheek was pressed against my reflections. She looked directly at me, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across her purple lips. This time, she wasn't just a reflection. Her hands, cold and solid, broke the surface of the real water. They grabbed my shoulders with an impossible, skeletal strength. I screamed as she pulled me down, my head plunging beneath the surface. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was her face. No longer a reflection, but a real, tangible thing. Her vacant eyes staring into mine as she claimed the life she had been promised a decade ago. The water in the tub was, after all, a gateway. She just needed me to open it for her one last time. Story 5. The Tithe of the Twisted Path. Every small town has its prized tradition. In Oak Haven, it's the Black Creek Corn Maze. Every Halloween, the farmer, old Mr. Abernathy, designs a new, impossibly complex labyrinth that draws people from 3 counties over. The local legend, the one the adults whisper when they think the kids aren't listening, is that the maze is alive. They say it demands a price for the town's prosperity, that the rich soil and bountiful harvests are paid for by a single soul. The tithe, which the maze chooses and consumes once every Halloween. We always thought it was just a spooky story to make the maze more exciting. Last year, my best friend, Liam, and I went on Halloween night, determined to be the first to solve the maze. We went in just as the sun was setting, the sky a brilliant, bloody orange. The corn stalks were over 10 feet tall, creating a dense, claustrophobic world of green and gold. For the first hour, it was fun. We were making good time, following the map Abernathy gave out at the entrance. But as darkness fell, the maze began to feel different. The paths seemed to shift when we weren't looking. We'd double back, only to find the way we came was now a dead end, a solid wall of corn. The air grew still and silent, the sounds of the distant harvest festival fading away completely. The only sound was the rustle of the dry corn leaves, a sound that began to sound less like the wind and more like whispering. Panic started to set in. Our map was useless. Every turn we took seemed to lead us deeper into the heart of the maze. Liam, always the brave one, tried to keep our spirits up, telling jokes and pretending it was all part of the fun. But I could see the fear in his eyes. That's when we realized we weren't alone. We'd hear a heavy, shuffling footstep in the row of corn just parallel to us, always keeping pace. When we stopped, it stopped. When we ran, it ran. We'd call out, "Who's there?" And the only reply would be a low, guttural rustle, like something immense was turning over in its sleep. The maze was no longer just a puzzle of paths. It was a living, breathing entity, and it was playing with us. The walls of corn seemed to press in on us. The whispering grew into what sounded like hungry, mocking voices. We saw shapes in the shadows, tall, stooped figures that seemed to be made of corn husks and dried vines, watching us from between the stalks. We were lost, exhausted, and terrified. We huddled together at a crossroads of 4 identical paths, not knowing which way to turn. Liam pulled out his phone. The screen's weak light, a small beacon in the oppressive dark. No signal, of course. As he was putting it away, a sound came from the path directly in front of us. A soft, melodic humming, like a child singing a lullaby. It was strangely beautiful and utterly terrifying. From the darkness, a small glowing orb, like a will-o'-the-wisp, floated into view, hovering at the entrance to the path. It pulsed with a gentle, inviting light. "It's a way out," Liam whispered, a desperate hope in his voice. "It has to be." I felt a primal dread. "No, Liam, don't. It's a trick." But he was already moving, drawn to the light like a moth to a flame. "I'm not dying in here," he said, and he ran down the path, chasing the light. I screamed his name and ran after him. The path twisted and turned, and I struggled to keep up. I could hear his footsteps just ahead, and a faint, beautiful humming. I rounded a sharp corner and stopped dead. The path ended in a small, circular clearing. In the center stood a massive, vaguely humanoid figure made of woven corn stalks, dirt, and roots. It had no face, but it was the source of the humming. Liam was standing before it, transfixed, the small orb of light hovering over his head like a halo. He didn't even have time to scream. The ground beneath his feet turned soft like quicksand. The corn husk arms of the creature reached out, not to grab him, but to gently guide him as he sank into the earth. The soil swallowed him whole, and the ground sealed over him as if he had never been there. The humming stopped. The light went out. I was alone in the absolute dark, and then I heard a new sound. It was the maze itself, letting out a deep, contented sigh. A clear, straight path lit up before me, illuminated by a sudden, brilliant harvest moon. It was letting me go. I ran until I burst out of the maze entrance and collapsed into the noise and light of the harvest festival. Mr. Abernathy was the first to reach me. He helped me up, his old eyes filled not with shock, but with a deep, sorrowful pity. "The corn always demands its price, son," he said, his hand on my shoulder. I looked around at the faces of my neighbors, the people I had known my whole life. They were all looking at me with that same expression. Pity for my loss, but relief that it wasn't them. They knew. They all knew. The prosperity of Oak Haven, the prize-winning crops, the peaceful way of life, it was all fertilized with a sacrifice. Liam wasn't a victim of a monster. He was the tide, and I was the one who was allowed to escape, to serve as a living, breathing warning. A warning that some traditions are kept for a reason, and that in the heart of the twisted path there is always a price to be paid.